Another way that our mind tries to control is to figure out the past, right? So this is the anxious attachment tendency of reviewing the conversation, re-listening to voice notes. You're trying to figure out, like, what did they mean? Why did they use that specific punctuation? What did that emoji mean? Why did they like this message and not that message? That's just an attempt for control. It's your brain trying to figure something out to soothe you. Hello, welcome back to another video on healing anxious attachment. Today we're going to talk about your control issues. Kidding, not kidding. Control is a topic that's maybe not necessarily sexy, but that has a lot of liberation in it. And I honestly didn't think I had control issues. I felt pretty chill. I felt like I could be very easygoing. And yet when I really looked at it, I realized that control issues were affecting so many areas of my life, my relationships, and my thoughts. And so the journey of letting go of control has been a journey of reclaiming a lot of energy, because we can spend a lot of time worrying and overthinking and solving problems in our head that don't even exist. And those are all ways that part of us, part of our ego, is seeking control. A high need for control can also show up if we get really triggered when plans change, or feeling really disappointed by not meeting our own expectations, or things not playing out like we thought they should or thought they would. And ironically, as I've been setting up to try and record this video, there has been everything go wrong that could possibly go wrong. There was like a guy outside with a leaf blower for so long, something else happened. I've needed to let go of control to let this episode happen in the time that it wants to happen. So let's get into it. I've been wanting to make a video about control for a long time, because understanding your need for control and your desire for control and the gift in being able to let go of control when it makes sense, and healthy control, understanding that has been such an important part of my own growth and development journey. I think wanting control and gripping for control and perfectionism and wanting to get things right is some conditioning that's been around for me for a long time, and it's hard to let go of, especially when we're triggered in one of these things. If I'm triggered in a scenario where I want control, that's when it's even harder, like when it's actually super active. So let's talk about the concept of control. I think the word rolls out of our mouth a lot. Maybe you say I have control issues even. And if you are, that's amazing, but there's also these other sneaky ways that it shows up in life and relationships, what that means, what to do about it, how it shows up in your body. And I was driving home the other day. I had taken my partner to the airport, which is like a 2-hour drive away. And on those drives, I tend to get all sorts of different ideas drop in, like, in the shower, in the car. Whenever your hands are not distracted by a screen, then I, anyway, get all sorts of ideas. So control is one that came through, and I sent myself a voice note to make some notes. And now I want to talk about it with you. And then I may be looking at my notes a little bit here and there. So the thing that sparked the idea for me was the discussion about controlling our emotions, because that is one that is really popularly conditioned into us. There is an age somewhere in your development where the adults around you started to tell you to calm down. Don't be too silly, don't be too hyper, don't be too expressive, don't be too angry, don't be too sad. And from that moment, we start to realize, oh, I guess I have some control here. I have a bit of a gas pedal, maybe. And we start to learn how to control our emotions, which in some sense is obviously important. It's important to, in sometimes where and how we project energy out of our body, especially in terms of anger. We don't want everyone in the world to completely just have a lid off their anger, because that can turn into violence and hurting someone. And also, if we can't allow ourselves to be with deep sadness and ground ourselves through it, it can also be something that we can get a little bit stuck in if we don't have something else within us to anchor into. And then also on the higher levels of emotional mastery, there is something to be said about the fine line between being able to attune to those around you and how your emotions are impacting them, while also being free in your own expression and validating your emotions, and maybe allowing that expression to wake something up in someone else or touch something deeply in someone else. So that's something in my own journey that I've been in study of recently. So what I see is that a lot of women are suppressed in their emotion and expression, whether it's on the side of sadness and anger, or excitedness and silliness and giddiness. Something feels dampened. And sometimes the first correction is this big swing of the pendulum. And I see this a lot in sort of like the feminine energy movement, where people swing into this, okay, everything has to be felt and expressed, and it has to be flow and ease, and I can only do it if it feels good. And there's a lot of freeing of our sensuality and sexuality. And this is an important part of the like breaking free. And then there gets to be a balance of where we get to be attuned to how that expression is used, and we can be really tactful and make sure that that expression really comes from truth and love. And when we get to there, that is what, the higher levels of feminine embodiment work, or like priestess oracle work. It's how can I artfully use my energy to shift the environment that I'm in the way that love calls for, basically. So that's a totally different topic for another day, but that is what's on the most balanced, healthy, loving, embodied use of emotion, from suppression to artful expression. So let's come back to the suppression part, because that's where our emotional control comes in. So you might already know that your emotions are kept pretty tight. Maybe you have a limit or a story of, I feel okay crying alone, but not when I'm around other people, or I can cry with my friends, but not with a romantic partner. Maybe your damper is around anger. Maybe it's around joy. For me, sadness, I was always pretty comfortable with. Anger was one that I could step into, but it took a while for me to completely be able to take the full damper off, like the cork out of the bottle. I wish I could think of a better metaphor where it like comes off slowly. I guess it's like a gas pedal. But anger is one that is often so conditionally suppressed in women, because we don't want to be seen as the crazy girl or the manic woman or hysterical, because there's a lot of judgment in our society that comes from that. And what I truly believe is that there are collective fears in our society about the amount of power that women have and can have, right? And it's important for us to learn what that is in our body. Otherwise, we are maybe harboring or leaking our power in a number of ways. This can be sexual energy, this can be sacred rage, and that topic of sacred rage has helped me to really release my anger in ways that are healthy and make sense to me. And I talk about the concept of sacred rage in another video, which is about my 7th video. And the example that people usually give about that is the rage of a mother bear. Like, not to get in between a mom and her baby, because she's gonna be mad and she's going to attack. And we see this in the animal kingdom, but also in the human world. With a mom, if her child is under threat, usually that anger is going to come out unapologetically, because it is like important for the survival of her young. So it's really instinctual in some ways. But I don't have children, but I did have a lot of suppressed anger. And through different somatic experiences and ceremonial settings, I have been able to tap into that anger in a really deep way, to the point of, hearing my body make pretty primal screaming sounds. And there was definitely a point in my life where I'd never made a sound like that in my life, like since maybe as a 3-year-old throwing a little screaming temper tantrum. But when the space is created and you can connect to that sensation in your body, I mean, you might know your own anger sensation, but you might not. It might be kind of hidden under a freeze response, but maybe you have the awareness of frustration at least, or for you it might feel like seeing red, or your ears get really hot, or your face gets hot. We kind of have some physical sensations sometimes, and then sometimes it gets stuck in our throat from expressing it, or we feel like, oh, I'm not allowed. So in the anger episode, you'll hear about different ways to release anger, and I also have an episode in my Becoming Secure membership that takes you through 5 different ways to release anger. Because some people feel pretty disconnected from being able to release it through your voice. So there's also some body-based exercises that make more sense where we can be silent but still release and move some of that anger. But I would like to normalize moving anger through the body, through the throat, through growling, through screaming. And this doesn't mean you have to do this in front of someone else, but it just allows you to move what's already created in your body from the emotion. So maybe you've heard that emotions are energy in motion, and if the emotion is anger, it wants to move. And something about anger is it's often telling us what our boundary is, and it can be especially angering when our boundary gets crossed, or when we let it get crossed, or when we cross our own boundary. And there may be many times in your life where you have let your boundaries be crossed, or crossed your own boundary with a decision or the way that you used your energy or something that you tolerated, and that anger is potentially in your body wanting to be expressed. And if we're not expressing it, then we are likely in a holding pattern, which is a pattern of control. We're controlling the emotions. We're controlling energy that wants to express through our body. And if it doesn't leave the body, then it's staying in the body. And if we want to hold it in the body, then we have to create some holding pattern around it. So when it comes to suppressing emotions, some people hold them in their gut, in their intestines, and have bad digestion. Some people hold it in their hips, your neck, your back. Usually the pattern that I see is that the gut is more sadness, but sometimes it's anger. Sometimes our womb space, we have a lot of emotion. So if you feel disconnected from those areas of your body, or you can feel this tightness or this rigidity or this constriction or something that's like a locking, that's a bit of an indicator that there is some physical or somatic control pattern to hold it in your body. So that kind of covers the emotional suppression and the physical body control holding pattern. Also, clenched jaw is another one that I kind of mentioned at the beginning. And some Eastern medicine modalities have more of a map where they're like, okay, anger is liver, and this emotion is spleen, and this emotion is kidneys. I don't necessarily see it that way, although I think those maps are interesting. What I noticed is that wherever the body is weakened or kind of has like availability for stress to go, the stress will go there. So you could have an actual shoulder injury from playing volleyball in high school, and now the suppressed emotions are going to continue to make that injury inflamed and consistent. So it's not just the injury from the sport, it's like when you start to feel into it, what do you feel? Do you feel incredibly annoyed? Do you feel very frustrated? Do you feel very sad? And you might think it's about the injury or the pain, but it could be something a little bit deeper that is being stored there because it was like a vulnerable place in your body for that tension, stress, emotion to go. And actually, let's also talk about the emotional expression of joy and how we suppress around excitement and giddiness. This is one that is definitely still an edge for me. I have a lot of stories around the sort of hyperness. I feel like as soon as I feel that happy, I feel thoughts in my head that are like, oh, don't make life be too good, other people will be jealous, or other people can't have this, so you shouldn't have it either, or you only have this because of this specific scenario that you're in, which is just due to a privilege and it's nothing that you actually did, so you shouldn't feel happy about it. And those are the real thoughts in my head. And it's important to name the thoughts we have around a certain expression because it allows us to sort of become the witness of what's happening, and can also show me where I'm, for example, playing small in my expression, or dampening, literally experiencing joy, which is so often the thing that we're chasing all the time. So when I was exploring that, what I like to do is, first, I think everyone should explore this relationship and your relationship to silliness and play, because we so often leave it behind as adults. And if you're really in the personal development world or in like the conscious community, then you've probably seen these workshops that are like, they always say play, let's play together, let's do, like, they're using this word play, they're playing like animals on the floor, doing like very flow body movement and stuff. And it's because this is a feeling that doesn't naturally exist for a lot of people when we get into our adult responsibilities of life. So to explore this, I will take you through how I explored it. So first I asked, okay, where in my life do I feel comfortable to be really silly? And for me, it's with my siblings, it's with my family. We've always been pretty lighthearted, and I just feel pretty accepted by my siblings in my silliness anyway. But I wanted to stretch that a little further because family is like kind of an exception in some ways. If I'm comfortable with them, doesn't mean I'm going to be able to bring this into strangers or the world supernaturally. So then what I remembered is that one of the places that I felt safe to do that was at a summer camp that I went to. And then I also worked at that summer camp closer to when I was like 18 as a counselor. And within that camp and the program of that sleepaway camp, there's so much imagination and creativity and playfulness and expression that is really wound into the tapestry of the experience of being there. So as the counselors, we would dress up for the kids multiple days a week that were called character days. So we would show up as not ourselves, but as whatever the leader of the week had chosen. So I got to play a lot of different characters. I was the Black Widow from the Avengers ones. I was also this like boot camp army instructor for like a boys' night. I did the monkey from Aladdin, like Abu, and all day I was just like Abu, pretending to sit on Aladdin's shoulder. It's hilarious, but in that environment, there was just no cringe factor to it whatsoever because everyone was on the same team. You were among children, so that obviously brings out your imagination, and they're really like bought in. So it was really accepting, and whatever you could express was just fully accepted by everyone else. And it was almost like the more you played the part, the more it was celebrated. So it was such a welcoming invitation in terms of leaning into these flavors of play and expression and silliness. And when I remember that, it makes bringing in any sort of edgy flavor a little bit easier in real life. And I think that something like improv classes are probably so good for this. I've never gone to one, but I have some friends that go to them. So if you're wanting to explore this out in the wild as an adult, that would be a good place to start. And for a couple years now, I've also been studying polarity teachings from a mentor, and she has one workshop that she's done a few times since I've been working with her, and I think it's called Flavors of the Feminine. And she talks about all these different archetypes that the feminine can take. And it's basically giving us a chance to express and embody and feel in our bodies different archetypes. So she talks about the queen, who, as I say that, you can imagine what is the stereotypical queen, her posture, her demeanor. And then she invites the ditz. And the ditz is like the stereotypical blonde, bubbly, bouncy, unabashedly, like kind of dumb and like curious about life. She also has this confidence, you know, even though people see her as not intelligent, she has this confidence about her that is so magnetic that she just lights up every room. And there's also like the maiden and the mother and the crone, and I love doing archetype work. So just by saying the words, I know that it's creating a sensation in your body or a vision in your mind of what it is to be that. And just because of that, you can also kind of take this shape yourself. But what we normally do is that our control and our holding patterns are keeping us in one small window of expression, because we found somewhere along the line that this window of expression feels the most safe, even though it's not the most freeing. It might not even feel the most like you. It might not be the thing that you know is for your highest good. It might not be the shape that drives you to your desires. It might not get your needs met. It might not communicate your boundaries, but we are used to it. So we stay in this small controlled pattern. And no matter how much work you've done, most of us still find our way to a pattern. Even if that pattern suits who we want to be and is more aligned with who we are, we can still get really comfortable. My next invitation for you is to think about, what is that pattern for you? What are some expressions that you see in other women that feel unavailable to you? Where do you feel like, I would never act like that? Because chances are, even acting like that, even if it was for 3 minutes alone in your room, whatever it is that feels like too much, the hype girl, the queen energy, it's going to do something to your system. It's going to interrupt this pattern, and those little interruptions are really beneficial for letting energy move through our body. So let's switch gears to talk about control in the mind. Trying to control things with our mind. This is the realms of anxiety, of overthinking. So if we're experiencing anxiety, there's a high chance we are not in the present moment. And I talk about this in another video that's called What Ayahuasca Taught Me About Anxiety. And it's a really good one to listen to if you notice yourself in overthinking, all the different scenarios, etc. But what that really is an attempt for control. When we spend time in our mind overthinking, we are likely trying to predict the future or control the future by playing through all these details in our mind. We might tell ourselves, oh, it's so we can have a plan or a strategy, but ultimately it's just an attempt for control. You're just trying to control what you think the outcome would be. And when we link that overthinking and control to something that becomes an expectation, then we're literally trying to control God, the universe, spirit, into one out of infinite possibilities of something playing out. So let's bring it back to relationships. I used to do this all the time. I would start dating someone, or going on dates, and I'd be so excited that I would daydream about the future. And when I daydreamed about the future, that future would look as bright and beautiful as I could possibly paint it, with all of these specific plans for how the next date was gonna go, and the next month was gonna go, and how we would travel together and go to these places, and maybe we do this thing, and maybe we do that thing. And when I do that, it's an attempt to keep you safe, keep me safe. If you do it, it's an attempt to keep you safe, because if that's a direction my mind thinks I'm headed in, then of course I'm going to feel good about walking down that path. But when I played these daydreams over and over in my mind, I'm just trying to control an outcome. And when it has this shiny rose-colored glass over it, there's also expectation there. So if something doesn't go the way that I had it in my head, which it probably won't, even if it was just as good, but something else, then I will feel disappointed because my expectations didn't get met. And that's such an exhausting loop to be in. And as I mentioned, it kind of gives also these rose-colored glasses of, if, okay, the story in my head is I'm going towards this amazing outcome, this amazing relationship, then where am I missing potential red flags on the way that are telling me that I'm not actually going in that direction? Another way that our mind tries to control is to figure out the past, right? So this is the anxious attachment tendency of reviewing the conversation, re-listening to voice notes. Let's say it was a texting conversation where you're trying to figure out, like, what did they mean? Why did they use that specific punctuation? What did that emoji mean? Why did they like this message and not that message? Again, that's just an attempt for control. It's your brain trying to figure something out to soothe you, and it's nowhere near the present moment. It's basically an imaginary land, and both directions, thinking about the future or the past, are really exhausting and often don't lead to any real resolution because there's nothing concrete about it. They're both guesses and theories and imagination. And because we will never land on this is 100% what they meant or this is 100% what's going to happen, we're just going to stay in this unknown, not knowing, which is the opposite of control anyway. So in this attempt for control, we feel more out of control. So as I just said, and as you can probably feel, that's an energy drain. Thinking about every scenario and outcome is a draining pattern to be in, and that's one of the reasons why I can hopefully inspire you to consider letting go of control a little bit, or the attempt for control. Another thing about control is that it's really rooted in fear, survival, and scarcity mode. And I'm sure you've seen some video on Instagram or TikTok that's about fear and scarcity mode, and maybe manifestation and scarcity mode, but it's just not a very fun place for us to be in on a nervous system level, because it means we're in some sort of survival response. And when we're in a survival response, we can't make the most clear decisions, and we can't be the most creative and the most loving that we could possibly be. So if we're trying to control, we are in fear. We are gripping onto something. We are feeling a lack. And it might sound in your head like, what if this happens? What if this doesn't happen? What if? And instead, what we need to try and anchor in is I can handle any outcome no matter what. So I don't need to worry about the what ifs, because even if it's the worst of the worst of the worst of the what ifs, I will still be okay. And if you can come back to that place and anchor in that place, then we don't have to think in circles. And the truth is, you can handle most of life's experiences. You've probably already handled a version of most of life's experiences. So no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. So if you can say, okay, my mind is giving me these worst case scenarios where he's going to say this, then he's going to break up with me and then what? And then I'll cry and be sad. And then what? And then I'll be okay and life will move on. And it's that is the letting go of control. That is surrendering to whatever happens, and coming back to who you know yourself to be, which is someone that can handle and survive without the grasping, without the gripping, without the need for control. Part of my list is that control is the opposite of trust. Control is I need to figure this out. It's forcing, I need to do something about this, and it's not really flowing. And life is flowing on its flow. And we are in the river, and there's actually not much we can control, and we can be in the flow of the river, or we can try and swim up the river. So obviously you have things that are in control. You can decide what to eat for lunch. You can decide if you want to do some laundry, but outside of a few hours, we don't have that much control. And when we're in this state of gripping for control, there's also a physiological response going on. So like I said, it's a survival response. And sometimes that might feel really big, sometimes it might feel really subtle. Either way, our body is having a response where there's probably potentially a little adrenaline involved or cortisol involved, and that's gonna be taxing on our adrenal system over time. Even our vision starts to narrow when we are in a stress response. There's all sorts of physiological things happening that are not rest and digest or open and calm and flow. So if we're constantly in this needing to control everything in our lives and feeling really hyper vigilant and tracking all these details, and there's one quote that I give my clients a lot of the time, which is, I did not make it up, but it's not my monkeys, not my circus. And that's a good reminder when we start to watch our energy go into someone else's problem or someone else's chaos. And when someone presents you with a problem or has a problem, it can be very easy to go into fix-it solution. And this is something that my brain is very good at. So someone will tell me, oh, I'm looking for a room in Lisbon, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden I'm like thinking, how could I solve their problem? Looking in Facebook groups, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, they didn't even ask me for help, but my brain is just trying to solve this problem so that the loop can be closed. When the truth is, like, not my monkeys, not my circus. Maybe in that scenario if it's a friend, but even other ones where I like go into a cafe or a gym or like some sort of business, and I see an actual problem and I'm just thinking about how to solve it, when I will never say anything, never do anything. Not my monkeys, not my circus. Not your monkeys, not your circus. So let's talk about control in terms of relationships, how that sometimes shows up, and what we can do about it so that we have harmonious, loving relationships. So something really interesting that I learned is that control is a part of the wounded feminine expression. And I have an entire teaching in the Becoming Secure community that's about masculine and feminine and what the healed expression of masculine and feminine looks like versus the wounded expression. So because the healed feminine energy, which you have them both, right? We want to be able to play in balance in both the masculine and the feminine. We want to be able to be in the one that we need in the moment, and also in relation to the person that we're relating to. When we talk about the sides, sometimes people just put it in masculine and feminine, but I like to separate it into healing and wounded. So gripping and control is part of the wounded feminine because it's not trust. So if we are not trusting the person that we're in relationship to, we are probably going to try and control. And this may have something to do with their behavior, but it also may have nothing to do with their behavior and all to do with your conditioning. So if you don't trust them to initiate, for example, then this control might show up as you initiating a lot, you starting the conversation, you planning the dates, because you don't trust that he is going to come and choose you and come and make a plan and move things forward and be in his masculine direction and leadership if you don't do something about it. This also might show up as needing to know what will happen, needing to know a lot of details about plans or things, or like wanting to know about the relationship. Where is this going? What does this mean? What are we going to be? Instead of being able to surrender and lean back and feel and experience what's happening, instead of trying to race to some finish line or marker, however you see it in your mind, that you're anticipating or hoping to move towards. So if you want to be in your feminine expression, also you have to be able to let go here and trust. And it doesn't have to be that you like hand over all of your authority or sovereignty to someone, obviously, but you have to trust that you will be okay. You will be okay if he doesn't initiate, and if your desire is for him to initiate, then you have to trust him to do that. And if he doesn't do it, it's fine, it's information. But if it's something you desire, then can you give him the trust to let him handle that? This is just an example. So when we talk about control in relationship, if you notice this happening, I would invite you to ask yourself, is me trying to control this serving the relationship? And there's nuances in that answer. So you have to trust yourself. You have to really think and be discerning. Is me trying to control this serving the relationship? So when I started dating my current partner, I told him that this was something that had been big for me in the past and I had been working on, and I could really see where I was also letting it go in the people that I had been recently dating before him, and it felt good and I still felt safe. But there was a moment when we were traveling with some friends and we were in kind of trying to plan a group activity, and I started to question what he was doing, and he was kind of leading the pack, and there was something that didn't make sense. And if we were, if it needed to be the most logical and efficient thing, if that's all that was important and there was no romance involved, then yes, I would have been right. But it was not serving the relationship for me to assert control and like overstep his dominance. It created tension in front of our friends. It undermined his leadership, and it was not cool. It didn't matter if I was right. I'm sure whatever it was about was like a difference of $5 or like a 4-minute drive path. I don't know, something super small, but my desire for control or feeling like I needed to like make the plan for the day to be okay and for everyone to have a good time was not it. And I saw it and I apologized to him after, but it was not fun. And that was also kind of the first time it happened in our relationship. So anyway, something to keep an eye on. And it is hard to let go of this pattern, because the part of you that wants to be right and wants to like be in control, really, I don't know how to say it any other way, is going to be scared to let it go. And it's not just about letting it go in situations where it's easy, like going to, I don't know, a spin class. You're not going to try and go be the leader of the spin class, most likely, but maybe you are on your bike thinking about, how would I do this different if I was the spin class instructor? And oh, that was that problem, and maybe he did this thing, and now the group doesn't feel led, or he's not tracking. Like, wow, there's so many ways that we can try and control, think we'll do things better, and it's not supportive. And especially if you want the other person to lead, and if you're dating a man and you want him to be in his masculine, then we have to give them that. We have to let them be in their natural leadership, because it's easy sometimes to steamroll a man when we are a woman who has been super independent and knows better, because sometimes you do know better, technically, but it does not help, and it does not empower your man to keep being in the leadership and the direction role when we're like taking him down all the time. And the last piece I'll say about this is, because it is hard to let go of, sometimes the situations and the environments are triggering. And so then we have to bring ourselves back into regulation. And sometimes you will feel very mad, and then you need to express that anger. That doesn't mean yelling and screaming at your partner. Maybe it means removing yourself from the room, going into your bedroom, hitting a pillow into the wall, or screaming into a pillow, because we know it's like, it's not about him, but there's a lot of anger in my body because something's triggered, and I'm gonna breathe, and then I can come back into the scenario. And that is healthy anger expression. It really be like that. And I know that very few people are practicing that way because of the societal conditioning is to suppress and be very contained, or the opposite of like, I'm just gonna swear and yell and dump all this anger on you. Whereas the healthy ways to master your emotions by learning to move your own energy and come back into a grounded state. Sort of wrapping up, there's two more things that I want to touch on. One is, why do we have such control issues, right? So like everything, this is part of our conditioning, a word that I mentioned a few times in other videos. And conditioning is the patterns and the stories that we were seeing through our society, through our friends, through our parents, all those big influencers. And so when it comes to women and control, I think that there's one which I kind of mentioned, which is societal expectation of being able to keep yourself reined in and controlled, because there is something about an expressed woman that makes people uncomfortable. And it makes them mostly uncomfortable if she's mad, but it makes people mostly uncomfortable because people can't hold other people's power and expression very well because they're not in their own power and expression, and they've also been conditioned to be very reined in. So seeing someone else in their expression can feel very like, that's unsafe, don't do that. I think there's also the unfortunate stereotype of men not wanting to handle women in their emotions. So there's like the stereotype of PMS and women, or that women are moody and women change their mind and that it's a problem. There's so much negativity put around this. And I'd love for that to be a collective reframe, because the feminine is expression. It is a range of emotion. And if you're looking at feminine and masculine teachings, then even the emotional expression of a man is a feminine quality within him. So if we could all be okay with and in touch with our range of expression, then it would be a lot less taboo to be emotional for either sex. It's all on purpose. It's like part of our biology to be able to feel all of these emotions. You can see where there is more layers of conditioning of, I need to be in control. There might be stories, control equals success, control equals safety. So all of these things are really valuable to look at and just reflect on. And the final thing that I'll say is that in relationship, letting go of control allows the space for someone else to be in control, which in the beginning can feel really scary, especially if you're not naturally trusting. But if you can let go of control and offer up the trust to someone else, that allows you the chance to feel taken care of, to feel supported, to receive, which are the things that I know that we are so often craving for. Meanwhile, we're here in these rigid control-needing patterns in this limited amount of expression, which is I'm fine and I don't need you, whatever the story is, right? So letting go of that with friends or romantic relationships and just surrendering a little and letting other people handle it is the thing that is going to allow you to start to feel taken care of. A good entry point for that could be, where does it feel safe for me to be held by someone else? Where does it feel safe for me to let go of control? Then can we look at the benefits of softening there, or of opening more to that? What do I get to have? How do I get to be if I just am not in control? And there might be feelings of guilt that come up, or fear, and that is the edge that we get to stretch. So as with a lot of my YouTube videos, I have the deeper dive, the journaling, the guided somatic practice around the same topic in my Becoming Secure membership. So that's going to help you kind of discover and map where are your control patterns in your body. There's also exercises in there that are going to allow you to release emotions that might come up, that you uncover about the physiological response about your control, or just emotions in general. And the whole theme of the Becoming Secure membership is healing anxious attachment. So you can trust that there is tons of tools and practices and teachings in there about relationships and trust and feeling safe in your own body, and so much liberation comes through doing the work that we do in there.